You're not alone. The reality check is ageism is everywhere in the medical field. Ageism is often spoken about in the medical field, specifically associated to the elderly generation. And I completely agree that a lot of people who are older do see a lot of ageism when it comes to the care that they receive in the medical field. But my reality check I want to talk to you guys about today is the fact that no matter where you are in your medical journey and no matter where you are on the age cycle of life, you are going to see ageism in the medical field. And I wish this wasn't the case, but it only took 6 months into my medical journey for me to meet my first specialist that discriminated against me due to my age. And I'm going to share that story with you guys today. And I really want to dive fairly deep into how that felt as a patient and how that 10 minutes that to him as a specialist was probably, just a regular 10 minutes in his regular daily life because he does this all day, every day. But to me as a patient, that 10 minutes was 6 months of agony and pain and frustration and waiting to find out what the heck was going on with me. That 10 minutes was so critically important to the future of my health. And the way I was treated in those not even 10 minutes with the specialist, because honestly, I think my time with him was about three or 4 minutes. The fact that my story is the way it is at the age I was is just absolutely appalling. And it's something we need to talk about more. And most of all, I just want you guys to know you're not alone. It happens to so many people, and I want you to understand that, yeah, we might not be able to stop all of it, but I'm here to try and share my story and at the same time make you feel stronger and make you feel like you're not alone in this, and that maybe I can help you with a pointer or two if you ever come across it again. So 6 months into my medical journey, I had in early March been in and out of emergency rooms with no real avail. I had met with an internal medicine doctor and he recommended that I see a gastroenterologist, which made a lot of sense due to my family history of gastro issues and the fact that I had all kinds of gastro problems in my family. And due to the pain that I was having, the reality is we didn't think it was just IBS anymore, and we really thought that, there was need for additional support from a specialist to kind of reevaluate where we were at and, potentially, discuss having a colonoscopy, which would be the next logical step in my journey. We put in a referral. It took about 6 months for me to get in with the specialist. And he was one of the first specialists I was ever referred to, so I didn't really know what to expect. I wasn't really sure what was going to happen because a lot of specialists are in hospitals or have their offices in hospitals, so the environment's very different than, a walk-in clinic or a family doctor. It's much more fast-paced. They see hundreds upon hundreds of patients a day through these clinics that are inside of hospitals, and so it's definitely a different experience. And I had never lived it, so I didn't really know what to expect. I get brought into a room and an intern comes in, which I now know is very common when you see a specialist, that often they'll have their residents come in. I shouldn't say intern, they're really residents who are working towards their specialties, who are essentially there to do the, basic first step digging into, your history and where we're at before the specialist comes in. This allows for the specialist to see a lot more patients this way. And so I understand that concept and why the system's built that way. So I go through some, basic questions with the resident, and, I kind of felt like I was, helping him more than he was helping me. I was, giving him information that he wasn't really asking for, but I felt pertinent to my journey, which, in hindsight, I'm not really sure if that's the reality of how that was supposed to go, but that's what happened on the day. And so, I share some of my family history and just share about, my basic, pains at the time. And so he says, okay, yeah, that makes sense. We'll talk about next steps when the doctor comes in, the specialist, and, kind of go from there. And I said, okay, sounds good. So, I now know that resident went to the specialist, gave him a quick rundown of my story, reviewed my chart very quickly, and then came into the room. And so I was expecting, to sit down and have a quick chat and then, have him evaluate me and go from there. And the doctor came into the room and instantly just asked, no hello, no comments, no nothing. I get it, you're busy. They were probably an hour or two behind at this point. And, he just asked me straight to lay down on the table and said, okay, I'm going to palpate you and stuff like that and do what he needed to do. And after that, I hadn't even had the opportunity to stand up off the table at this point. I'm still laying down on the table, as he's doing his thing. And his comment was, you just have IBS. That's all it is. You don't have anything. There's no need for a colonoscopy. You're only 22 years old. I then tried to, retort by saying, due to my family history, is there, for additional precautions, and just to do a little bit more investigating due to the fact that I'd been in and out of emerge at this point 4 times over the span of 3 months with these really, really bad stomach pains. I was having a hard time keeping anything down. There's just a lot of basic things that just weren't going right. And I, tried to push by sharing my family history with him again, just in case the resident hadn't relayed all that information. And he said, no, at this time, there's no need for additional investigation. And he left the room. At 22 years old, your first, real experience with the medical system at this point, that was hard. I still process that day. That was still a day in my medical journey that, will always hit me fairly hard, I think. I think for a few reasons, just due to it being my first experience with a specialist in general, with the fact that I was so dismissed, and it being the fact due to my age at this point, it didn't make any sense to me. We've come a long way since then. I had to see 2 other gastros. I finally got my colonoscopy, and 3.5 years later, I was diagnosed with Crohn's. And the gastroenterologist who I work with now was a little flabbergasted at the fact that it was quite clear that I was having more than just, a standard, IBS attack. And not to say that IBS isn't life-changing, because it truly is. I know people who have IBS, and I would never want any of their symptoms on, my worst enemy. But just due to my symptoms, IBS just didn't fit as a diagnosis. And the fact that I finally had seen a gastroenterologist that, to me, saw me as a human, saw me as a person that needed help. And for her to tell me so matter of fact that I had Crohn's, and so matter of fact that I wasn't being dismissed, that this was truly something that I needed to take care of, and that this was something that made no sense, that we'd been fighting to just get a colonoscopy done for 3 years. All those things are just infuriating. And I share this not to get mad at the system, not to, there's bad apples everywhere when it comes to, professions. It doesn't matter what profession it's from. You're gonna, get unprofessional people just about anywhere in the world. But as a medical professional, I truly believe that your job as dealing with patients literally on a day-to-day, it's your job to make sure that you are professional with those patients who are literally holding their health in your hands. It's just mind-boggling how many stories I've heard since then about people who have been affected by ageism in the system, and a bunch of other issues, which we're going to be talking about over the coming months. But this one hit hard because it hit home. I dealt with it. It affected me directly. And that's something I learned very strongly after that. I had to learn to advocate for myself even more. And that moment with that specialist made me really truly understand that. I don't think I understood patient advocacy as much as I did until after that interaction. And so, I thank him for that, because very early on I started to, make sure that my views and my quote unquote existence in the system was gonna be looked at, and was going to be evaluated, and was going to be addressed to the top options that I had within the system. And that's something I want you to do for yourself. I know it's hard. It takes a lot of energy and time to do that patient advocacy side of things. If you're not able to, try and find a friend or a family member or someone that supports you and that can go with you to appointments or can at least do those follow-ups that are so critical to ensuring you don't wait 8 months to get lab results back, all those types of things. Patient advocacy is so important in your long critical illness care plan. It's such a key part of it, and it's going to be important every step of the way. But if you believe that you are being looked at in an ageist way, and there's been a comment or an interaction that just didn't seem right or didn't feel right, have the courage to ask the question, are you making this based on an assumption? Or do you truly have scientific, backing for your reasoning? And that judgment moment of you actually asking that question and pushing and saying, do you just, have a preconceived notion, or do you actually truly believe this is the reality of what I'm living, makes doctors and specialists second guess for a second. It takes them a minute to take a step back and really evaluate. And if someone, I've learned this through my journey, is if someone gets really defensive really quickly, chances are they may not have the best diagnosis at heart or best chronic option for you at heart. If they get very defensive, chances are they just don't know the answer. And I don't expect my specialists or my doctors to know everything. However, I do expect that they have the respect to tell me, the willingness to be honest with me about the fact that I don't know the answer, but I'm gonna get back to you about it. And all those things play a huge part in the ageism conversation. And so take that in. I know I threw a lot at you guys today, but ageism is a conversation that needs to continue to happen, and the medical field needs to be aware of it and needs to be more conscious of their decisions when it comes to diagnosing and caring for patients who especially have long, chronic, complicated health and medical histories. And I just hope that this video empowers you to understand that you're not alone, and that with just a little bit of patient advocacy, it can just help and make things go just a really long way. And so until next time, I hope you don't forget to slow your roll and breathe.